I'm good. I'm good.
The
How are
second
you?
one. I've had a tough week, Jack.
Oh, really?
I've had a
Tough
tough
week?
week.
What's
Not a
going on,
tough
buddy?
week.
What's
I'm not. I. This is the thing, right? This is the thing we always talk about. It's so easy to be grumpy or to be anxious or be neurotic and have like a tough week and just be like,
certainly?
and be like, yeah, but other people are actually suffering. Other people are
Ugh,
actually going through things. Other people, and I immediately just did that to myself.
it's all relative, man. It's all relative, right?
Yeah. I mean, on the other hand, you don't want to be the type who's like, ugh, they don't have bacon? This place is terrible.
Oh, woe
Like,
is me.
yeah, like I think that's, everything has a balance, right? I was thinking about how, I was trying to figure out this appeasement part of my personality. This like, if someone's mad at me, someone I love, or is, someone in the family or whatever, like I have that. I think we talked about it last week. I have that set myself on fire thing where it's like, I'm so sorry. I'll do anything you want. Like, I'm
Yeah.
so sorry. You know.
You and I have even had moments like that when we've had a little like you and I have now never had like a full on fight or anything, but
No,
we've
it's
had
because
some
when we've had a
moments.
disagreement, it turns into an apology off.
Yeah,
Most
exactly,
by and large,
exactly.
like neither of us are particularly confrontational.
No.
But the thing of it is falling on your sword requires a certain time and a place, and like you have to take care of yourself, and it very rarely is called for to set yourself on fire. But the other end of the spectrum is like, I've dealt with some narcissists, and you worry that if you don't have that eye to self improvement, or that eye to like, maybe I did screw up, or maybe I did, if you like abandon that,
Yeah.
then that's that descent into sort of narcissism.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's easy for one's empathy to overwhelm your sense of self-preservation, I guess, and taking care of yourself. I mean, I
yeah,
struggle with that.
it's just finding that line of like, no, I didn't deserve that. I didn't deserve what that person did to me, or I didn't
Oh,
deserve that thing. That's so difficult.
I feel that in my very core. Yep.
Um, there's been a bit of that going on, and then a bit of like new awesome stuff that is way more awesome than the things that I have to get done. You
Yeah.
know. But then, like, the new awesome stuff is in your life partially because you were kind of good at getting the stuff done, and that's Jack. We haven't really talked all week. I want to chat with you.
Okay.
That's kind of one of the things I've been thinking about. Like relationships and love and being loved and all
Yeah.
that is so nice.
It is. It's
Like it's
beautiful. It's
so
warm, and it's addictive too.
I I want to I you know first of all, hello everyone. Welcome to podcast of the nerds. I'm
Hi,
Ian.
and I am Jack.
Um I'm going to include this because I think it's very on brand.
Yeah, I thought that's what we were doing anyway. Let's just roll with it, man. See
being
where it goes.
40 being 40 and dating, I'm seeing I took a long break, right? I took a long break, and there's an interesting thing about dating that I never really thought about um coherently or consciously, or whatever, but it certainly influenced past relationships.
Sure.
And that is that being loved, intimacy between two people, feeling not alone, feeling connected to someone else, has got to be one of the greatest goddamn feelings in the
Oh yeah.
entire
It's
world.
it's one of the things that make this whole experience worth it, right? The whole
Yeah,
life thing.
yeah, and
Yeah.
you know what feels way better than?
What?
publishing a video.
Of course, and that's
or
okay.
doing laundry, or going for a run. You know what I mean? You see what I'm getting at?
Of course, yeah, man, it makes sense, and that's totally okay too. You shouldn't beat yourself up for that. Do not beat yourself up about that. I know you will, but please don't.
No. That's not like I would not blame new things in my life for a video being late. Good God, look at my track record for publishing. Like, how many new things are in your life, Ian? And have they been there for the last 4 years? No, not at all. I'm just saying, like, it's because I've. We're going to talk about My Fair Lady in a minute, and it's so weird how, because I Henry Higgins'd myself, not the misogyny, but the like, I'm gonna live the bachelor life.
You really did,
for
yeah.
such a long time, because in my head, I was concerned. I've been in relationships where, I made the relationship my life and sort of my identity, and the things that I did well and the things that I was good at or any of that, I just let them slide. Not her fault. That was totally my responsibility and my choice. And then when the relationship felt, never do that, by the way. And I've talked about that in episode guides, what a disaster that is. There's a little of that in Buffy and Angel in season 2. Is that, like, when I look in the future, all I see is you. That's why I played that line so many times. Because that's a problem, right? That's a problem. And I think one of my, when that last relationship fell apart, I Henry Higgins'd myself, and I'm like, I'm going to just be alone and work on me and all of that, which is great.
Over the last couple of years, you and I have had many conversations where you've basically tried to convince me that you were content with being alone and all that stuff. And I'm like, but are you really? Are you really? I'm like, okay, I don't believe a word of it, but okay, I'm not going to push. I'm not going to push. But I knew it was bullshit, man. I knew it. You are one of the most loving and passionate people I've ever met. So there's no way you would actually be content with being alone. No way.
I love you too. But anyway, I think that one of the reasons I shied away from it was because once I started working on the channel, once I had a career and was doing things and understanding, like, oh, I'm passionate about this, I love this, whatever. The idea of getting back into a relationship to me felt nerve-wracking. Like, can I maintain this new thing that I built and this sense of self that I understand?
Sure,
with
it's scary,
all
man.
my, like, abandonment issues and, like, setting myself on fire and fear of narcissism and all of that garbage in a relationship. Do you know what I mean? And then you factor in how good being with someone feels. There is
feels good, right?
drug that compares.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, the butterflies and the warm and fuzzy feelings and all that. It's wonderful.
Yeah, Jack. I'm so embarrassed.
You're in love and it's adorable.
I'm so embarrassed. I find myself doing the no, you hang up. It's so gross.
It's gross and I love it. I love
it.
it.
So gross. But it's so real. You know what I mean? Like that, like. But I don't want to be in the room by myself now. Like,
I'm very much enjoying it in a vicarious manner. It's been beautiful to observe and just wonderful. I love every second of it, and yeah, it's great.
Well, it's a very new thing. That's all I'm saying, I guess. And by the way, to anyone listening, none of that was. Yeah, there's no excuses. There's no this is the thing too, is I'm also old enough now that I'm like, I'm just tired. Do you know what I mean? It's like I talked in a podcast before you were on where I was talking about how, like, I got old enough that a certain number of doors closed. I'm no longer going to be like a pitcher for the Chicago Cubs or a point guard for the Bulls or any of that. And that's freeing because now you can just do stuff because you want to. Like the idea of like there being a perfect thing or it being an identity thing or whatever is no longer. Yes, Norman MacLean wrote "A River Runs Through It" in his 80s, and Charlie Chaplin had kids in his 90s or whatever.
Yeah,
but
there's always time.
But my sense that the things that I pursued had to be tied to that is now just no longer the case. I'm writing a book this year because I want to, because I'm like, but that sense of too of like in my 20s thinking, well, I've got to get married and have children, and like all of the expectations around a relationship are now out the window. Other than I want to be healthy and I want to be kind and I want to communicate and I want that to be sort of the operating principle for people that I spend time with. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like,
what you're saying is you're a human being.
Yeah. But
that's good.
It's not something I choose to cop to on a regular basis.
Yeah.
But anyway, I don't know why.
I was
Go ahead.
I was having a conversation with a friend recently who was very regretful of like wasted time throughout their 20s and whatnot, and it just made me think about how like you're not ready till you're ready, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why like you're writing a novel at age 40. Like I'm doing this now at age 32. There's just like I guess you could say I wasted a portion of my 20s, but I just wasn't ready to do the things I needed to do, you know? And you can't force that. It just has to happen. You have to find it somewhere.
And I mean, like, neither you nor I has broadcast experience.
Right.
I've been working on the channel for 7 years, but I had nothing when I started. It was just like, okay, I'm just going to do this thing because I want to do this thing. You know, so a lot of the ties or preconceived notions of the way something was supposed to look in order for me to be successful at it are just kind of gone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And it's all bullshit, really. At the end
I'm
of the day.
very sure those things still are sort of in there. Like it's a continuous process of just kind of, oh, there's one, oh, there's one, oh, there's one, you know, and sort of freeing yourself up from whatever whatever that is, where they came from, whether that was your parents doing that or culture or you or yourself.
Yeah.
Where you're just like, I'm gonna be dead at some point.
Exactly.
And I'm tired. I'm tired of wasting time and worrying and, you know, all that stuff. Is how I feel lately. Anyway.
Yeah.
Good. No. Go ahead.
It's just it's important to be kind to oneself, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to achieve anything by beating yourself up and whatnot. And I'm very much a hypocrite in saying that because I'm the king of that. But
we're two of the worst.
Yes,
we are
but it's a process, right? It's something that you know, to use a cliche saying, Rome wasn't built in a day, right?
Yeah. I apologize for the sound. I forgot to close one of my apps. Jack, why don't you introduce what we're going to talk about today?
So today, first up, we are going to be going over our list of shame films. We watched The Room and My Fair Lady. Then after that, we will be responding to some of the comments left on our last podcast. And later on, we'll be going into the whole Joss Whedon situation, and Ian and myself have a couple of things to say about that. And then, of course, we'll finish off with the fanfic reading.
Yeah, specifically, we've titled that section regarding Joss Whedon, because there's a certain approach that I want to take to having the conversation, which we'll get into when we get there. But it's a whole thing. So, Jack.
Yes, sir.
Round 2, Mr. Sexy co-host. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing very well. I'm a lot more relaxed in this whole thing now. You know, we were writing the script, and I was actually excited to get into it this time. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's good. It's fun. But yeah,
Do you,
I've been watching Parks and Rec for the first time.
I'm so excited.
You've been bugging me for years
It's
to
yeah,
watch it,
it's a
and
constant refrain.
yeah, a while ago I tried watching season one. I'm like, this just isn't grabbing me. It just, and I don't know, it just wasn't doing it for me. And then you recommend skipping to season two, but because I'm an OCD kind of completionist, my brain was like, no, I can't do that. I can't skip anything. I can't do it. If I've already seen something, I can skip, but if I haven't seen it before, I can't skip. So I just bit the bullet and got through season one, and now I just started the last season, season seven, I think. And
Yes.
it's
So that season was the season that was produced specifically by Netflix. Did you watch Arrested Development?
no, no.
Okay. The Netflix, after a series has finished seasons, to me always tend to be a little weird. Because the
Yeah.
flavor is so different, the momentum is different, the feeling is different, and I felt that way about that Parks and Rec season.
Yeah, I watched a bit of the first episode last night. Then I was getting really tired and fell asleep. But it opens like 3 years later, which I thought was a weird jump. I
Yeah,
think I
yeah,
was like, okay, where's this going? But all right, cool, whatever. Yeah, and like, don't get me wrong, okay? I know this show is like a warm, comfy blanket
yeah.
to you, and you love it. I get that. And I do like it. It's a great show. Like the cast are fantastic and everything, but I still have this feeling that I've had since the beginning of like the beginning of watching it, where I'm just like, why would I watch this when I could just watch The Office? I feel like The Office is just a better version of this, really.
Well, I mean, we'd have to break down kind of subjectively what you feel the word better means.
Exactly. I mean that in a completely subjective way, really,
Yeah.
and that's all personal preference.
I think we talked about this offline. I think that The Office is funnier. I think it is episode to episode, moment to moment has more LPMs,
Yeah,
laughs
sure.
per minute.
Yeah.
And the writing might be a little tighter over the course of all the seasons. For instance, I think even after Michael leaves, the writing on the Office stays pretty solid.
A lot of people say that that's where it goes downhill. I do prefer the seasons with
Sure.
Michael, but I still think it's great, like
Yeah,
post Michael.
I think the post Michael seasons are underrated. It is interesting the DNA that the two of them share in common. The first season of The Office feels the least like the rest of the series.
Oh, totally. It's starkly different. Yeah.
Same with Parks and Rec. The first season feels very unlike the rest of it. But yeah, I mean, just me personally, I enjoy the characters on Parks and Rec a little bit more
See,
broadly.
yeah.
There's a handful
Again,
on The
that's
Office I enjoy, but yeah.
yeah. Again, that's a subjective thing. I'm much more attached to the Office characters. Like Jim and Pam. I love that whole relationship. It's gorgeous.
I love that relationship.
I love Kevin from The Office. He's just a dope, and he's hilarious and adorable, and I love him.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I also think the documentary style I think is done better on The Office too. Like watching Parks and Rec, I forget half the time that they were trying to emulate that whole
Yeah, they
documentary
kind of
style.
grew. They kind of grew away from it. I mean, the comparisons between the two shows are inevitable because I think Parks and Rec was intended to be a spin-off of The Office.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, and Michael Schur, who created Parks and Rec, I was either a co-creator or one of the writers on The Office. He played
Okay.
Dwight's
Yeah.
cousin.
The name rings a bell.
Yeah. And then Michael Schur went on to, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, went on to do The Good Place,
Oh, okay. Oh, the good place.
which to me even distills further the things that I enjoyed about Parks and Rec. Likable characters.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
mean, if you compare the three shows, I think you can see a style there for sure.
sure.
A very apparent style. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, like I said, I started the last season. Maybe I'll feel different after I finish it. I just
I did not like the last season
okay.
until several rewatches into the show. By my third rewatch, the last season started to grow on me. I think the final episode is great.
Okay.
I think it's a wonderful. They do something special for the way they write the final episode that I thought was very satisfying. But the final season in general smacks of they couldn't get all the actors in the same space at once.
Right.
So
Okay.
they shot some scenes with them here and some scenes with them here and so forth.
Oh. That can be very jarring if it isn't done right.
Yeah, but I still,
Yeah.
like I said, I've gotten to the point where I enjoy the final season, and I think it's better than the first.
I also wonder if maybe I might enjoy it a little more if they didn't try to do the documentary style and just made it more of a sitcom or something. That could have been cool. I don't know, but yeah, great show. I guess I just don't love it in the way that you do. I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah. But yeah, also in my free time, I just bought a Nintendo Switch, which has been.
congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Like I needed an excuse to buy more gaming things. Like I've got an Oculus Quest. I've got a $3,000 gaming PC. I mean, we're gamers, man. It's what we
Yeah.
do, right?
Yeah.
I've also got a Steam library full of games I haven't touched. But yeah, then the Nintendo Switch. So like. For the longest time, I've been playing, the big budget AAA titles, Assassin's Creed and all those kinds of franchises, and they're great, and I love those games. But they've turned me into a bit of a gaming snob, I guess, just a little bit.
Yeah. Okay,
Um,
say more.
yeah, but so like. I remember a couple of years ago, my brother bought a game. I think it's called Nuclear Throne, and it's like a bullet hell game, and the graphics are intentionally retro. Like this game looks like it could have come out in the 90s or something. And I kind of said to my brother, who's quite a bit younger than me, he's in his early 20s. I was just kind of like, I don't get the appeal of this because I remember a time when this was all we had. Like you and I come from a gaming generation where we had, the Super Nintendo going further back, the Sega Master System and the Atari and stuff, and so. I kind of feel like, why would I want to go backwards when there's all these new, better looking games to play? But in saying that, lately I've been craving simplicity in my gaming. Like Red Dead Redemption 2 is a mammoth of a game, and I love it, and it's huge and it's expansive, and Rockstar really knocked it out of the park with that one. But at the same time, it's overwhelming. Like you load into the game and you're like, okay, I got a ride from Saint Denis to New Austin. It's gonna take me like 10 minutes of like real time to get there. And what do I do? And so I just thought, I just want to play Mario. I want to jump on some toads and kill them, and just simple games.
The other thing about those kinds of games are when you take a week away,
Oh yeah,
you're basically screwed.
exactly.
You
Yeah.
have to relearn all of the systems and how did what was the thing? Especially a
Yeah.
Rockstar game where there's so much depth to the systems that they're working with.
Yeah.
And I still go upstairs and pick up Super Mario World. I live with some 4 kids that are 6 and under, and they're just now playing Super Mario World for the first time and are completely addicted.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
The Nintendo's very good. There are certain games that, like the PlayStation 1 generation games. You really have to be a classic gamer to enjoy going back and playing those.
Yeah, I tried to a while ago. I tried to play the first Tekken, and it's slow and clunky, and it doesn't look good.
Yeah, but Nintendo's very good about designing those games that are a little more timeless.
Yeah,
A little bit because they don't. There's not so many ingredients in the soup,
right.
but the 3 ingredients that are there are perfect.
Right. Yeah.
I even try and go back and play Final Fantasy VII from time to time, and I usually maybe I've become a graphic snob myself, where I get about halfway in, but especially when it comes to storytelling in games has come so far along that unless you're really into the systems or the nostalgia of it, it's very hard to go back.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned storytelling and whatnot. It has come a long way. But there's still like for example, one of the games that I bought on Switch that I've been enjoying a lot is Super Mario Odyssey, and story-wise, it's still Mario. Bowser kidnaps Princess Peach, and you got to go and rescue her. But so in terms of storytelling, it's still very basic, but the game itself is still fantastic. It's so good. It's very much like an homage to all of the previous games, I think. I haven't played Super Mario since probably Super Mario 64, and that's got to be approaching 20 years old now. That's a very old game.
Yeah, I can't remember the last time someone said that Nintendo didn't hit a home run with one of their in-studio games. There's lots of people that criticize the systems, but in terms of the games they put out on the systems...
Yeah. I think there was a lot of criticism on the Wii U, but I think with the Wii U, the criticism was that it wasn't enough of an expansion from the original Wii, I think. This is
the touchpad wasn't that much of a... It's a horn in Mario Kart on the Wii U. Like there weren't enough reasons to use the touchpad and to look down while you were playing the screen or whatever it was. So but again, system criticism. People love that Mario Kart.
Yeah. This is really the first time I've dipped my toes in Nintendo for quite a while. Like, I did have a Nintendo 664 for a little while. But I think it broke pretty quickly. Something happened. I don't really recall. But I got it because I wanted something simple, relaxing that I can just play in bed and not have to think too much about. And I'm having a ton of fun with it.
Nice,
love it. So, what about you, man? How are you doing, and what have you been up to?
I have done several rewatches of Fool for Love.
Oh, nice.
Script is coming along. The Whedon thing that came up this week kind of threw me off. We'll talk about that in a minute. I was playing The Last of Us Part 2. I had been very excited for that game.
Phenomenal. Yeah.
Naughty Dog's one of the reasons I own a PlayStation. They're one of the reasons why I will own a PlayStation 5. They're probably the only reason, other than maybe Sucker Punch, who does the Infamous series. Which I really enjoy. And don't get me wrong, I played like 10, 15 hours of Last of Us Part 2. I'm in the masterpiece camp. Love the writing, love the characters. But I have to admit, I'm so stressed in general at the moment, both good stress and bad stress.
Right.
It's been a year already for everyone, and then sort of personally and directly for me, there's been a lot going on, from quitting drinking to yada 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 yada, and I just found myself struggling to pick it up. every night. It's so emotionally grueling, and the first game was emotionally grueling.
Yeah, it certainly was. For the first game I played most of, the second one I couldn't help myself, and you took me through some of the beats
Yeah.
and whatnot, and yeah, so I know a bit about it now.
Yeah, and I mean, it definitely falls into that category of media as art. There's a bit in the first one that occurred, or excuse me, in the second one that occurred, where I kind of just put the controller down and just cried for a minute because I kind of made some emotional connections to things outside of the game, and that's one of my favorite experiences
Yeah,
in art.
relatable.
Yeah, is I'm looking for that resonant emotional connection.
That's something you and I share in common. That kind of
Yeah,
applying fiction to our lives and whatnot.
but the thing that was not happening when the first game was out was a pandemic.
Yeah, and the game is essentially about a pandemic,
Yeah,
right?
and well, I mean, the first month of the pandemic, the most popular movie on Netflix for a little while was Outbreak.
Yeah,
So to some degree,
which I love, by the way.
I think we as people seek out the topic doesn't necessarily keep us from current events don't necessarily keep us away from certain topics. It's just like there's just so much, and in my country there's an election year going on, and given it's a pretty important election year, we won't get into politics, but and social media is sort of drenched with all of this stuff, so it's just exhausting.
It's exhausting. Yeah,
And
exactly.
at the moment for me, I just found myself, and I had that problem where I waited too long, and know that I'm going to have to relearn some of the systems of the game. It's a relatively simple game compared to Red Dead.
I haven't played Red Dead in quite a while as well, so I'm gonna have the same issue when I do jump back in.
I'm not done with it. I'm going to get back to it. I've made a mistake of going and reading some of the controversies about the game, and I was like, oh, it's this crowd. I don't care. I don't care about any of this stuff. I'm enjoying it. I know my experience.
My ears pricked up. I'm like, okay, what's going on here? And I looked into it, and I'm like, is that it? Really? Like, come on, people.
Yeah. And I follow Neil Druckmann on Twitter.
Same.
And every one of his tweets, if you go into people who reply to his tweets, it's all that stuff. And it just to me, that kind of thing forgets also the time that we're living in, where it's like, this is never mind, I'm staying out of it. I don't want to get into that. I know my experience. I know what I'm enjoying. I know I'm enjoying the game, and none of the things that I read resonated with me personally. I did watch do you watch Girlfriend reviews?
No, I don't.
This is her catch is this is not a review of the game. This is what it's like to be the girlfriend of the person playing the game.
That is a great concept.
Yeah,
wow.
her editing is fantastic. She's very funny. And she did one on The Last of Us. It was a follow-up to her first video on it, which I haven't watched because it contains a bunch of spoilers, and that's about the extent of my seeking out media on the game or the conversation or any of that. I don't want to. That's I couldn't even watch the Last Jedi,
Right.
because I had become so I couldn't experience it myself. I was so biased or shrouded in the online conversation about it that it was impossible for me to just watch and enjoy the movie the first time through.
I had the same experience with Rise of Skywalker. I saw it in theaters with my brothers when I visited them over Christmas, and in the back of my mind the whole time I had the whole on the bullshit from that.
And I mean, maybe I would have agreed with those things. I don't know. I never got to find out. I never got to have the unadulterated experience of watching
Yeah.
it, you know? And
Yeah.
that's no one's fault but mine. It's no one's fault but mine for consuming the conversation and consuming the online dialogue around all of
Right.
it. So my morbid curiosity kind of drew me into it with The Last of Us Part 2 for a second. I was like, nope, I'm out.
Yeah. And like, I think it's okay for people to not like what they've
Of
done
course.
with the sequel. Sure, that's totally fine. But at the same time, there are some really strong accusations being thrown around and whatnot. And you took me through some of the events of the second game, and you know that like in particular with what they did with Joel, I struggled with big time at first, and then even though it's still like something that it's not that then I dislike it, and I won't go into spoilers, but it's just whoa, it's heavy, you know, and it's
Yeah. Well, The
yeah.
Last of Us 1 has a very challenging ending. From the point of the narrative, it's very morally and ethically ambiguous, and
It is.
the second one shows that they didn't take that for granted. To me,
Yeah, yeah,
was
yeah.
kind of the thing. The whole, if your universe is going to have, if you're going to grapple with the idea of nihilism, you have to grapple with ethics and philosophy around that.
And
You know,
and the consequences of actions too.
right? And
Yeah.
and I feel like they did. I feel like they, as far as I've gotten through the game, which I'm thinking is about halfway, I feel like they have. So again, I'm just looking for my own experience, and I'm
Yeah.
open to the idea that that experience might be in the camp of people who are saying are frustrated with it and don't like it, or in the camp that think it's a masterpiece. So far,
Yeah.
I'm in the masterpiece camp.
Yeah.
But I just want to have that experience, and being someone who works online all the time, more and more I have to be vigilant about keeping myself out of that conversation until I can have
Yeah.
that experience. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah, I myself am I'm the same, and I had like a cursory look at the controversy. Then, yeah, you know, you showed me a few things. We had the conversation surrounding Joel, and now I'm just like, all right, cool, that's enough.
Yeah.
If I do get a chance to play it, because I don't have a PlayStation, I'm just going to enjoy it for what it is, and see what happens. I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I put it down, and I have a backlog. My Excel spreadsheet of all my games has 180 in it right now, and I rolled a new one at random. And the rule is you play for an hour. And it's okay if you play for an hour and you say, I'm not enjoying it, then you shelve it, and then you re-roll. So I played Psychonauts for an hour or two, which is a
Okay.
PS2 game from Double Fine
Oh wow. Okay.
that is I'd heard lots and lots of good things about, and it's possible that I graphic snobbed my way out of it.
It happens to the best of us, man.
Yeah, where I was just playing The Last of Us 2, which might
Yeah.
be one of the prettiest games I've ever seen.
Yeah. I think once I get around to playing the first Mass Effect, I'm gonna struggle with that a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
Because the first one in particular looks pretty dated, from what I can tell.
And then from there, I went to the Outer Worlds using the Xbox Game Pass, which is $5 a month, and it has this game from Obsidian on there. It's Fallout in Space.
And you're enjoying that one?
I think so.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Tell me more.
I'm playing it. So I'm playing. It's beautiful. I'm playing it in 4K on an OLED display
Nice.
in HDR. So, and the world designs, they go for world designs that I've not seen before that are hyper saturated colors, and the closest I remember is that space game that came out a year or two ago that everyone was up in arms about. The one with the
Oh, No
giant...
Man's Sky.
No Man's Sky. No Man's Sky
Yeah.
has a kind of beautiful worlds that you land on that look unlike most other games of its ilk.
Yeah.
That, like even Mass Effect, the worlds all look, it's either a water world or a developed. The most random looking one in the game is Mars in Mass Effect 2, I think was where you go to Mars. So the worlds are great. It has that Fallout kind of 1950s future aesthetic.
Ah, yeah, yeah.
So the ships and the items and all of that have that. The problem for me is that I never actually know if I'm enjoying playing. I finished Skyrim, and I finished Fallout 3, and I finished Fallout New Vegas, and I could not finish Fallout 4.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I just burned out on Fallout 4. Bethesda games and the games that use that engine and that all of that sometimes to me feel like playing a to-do list.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, you and I were talking a bit about it yesterday, and I really struggle with the physics of that engine. It's very slow and clunky. I think it's Bethesda's proprietary engine. I can't remember what it's called, but it's.
Yeah,
I really hope they improve it for the next Elder Scrolls game.
It's a beautiful game. I mean, Outer Worlds 100% is another is cut from that same cloth. And for my part, I can get over it. The sort of my mental access to it is like Mystery Science Theater 3000. Like, it has a B-movie sort of heavy...
that can be charming.
Yeah, it has that same kind of charm of Plan 9 from Outer Space kind of sort of feel to it, so that doesn't bother me. It's just the to-do list feel of the questing system and all the green dots that are on screen as you turn around and like, I'm gonna head towards that one or whatever. Feels so inorganic.
Go and get a key and open a door and all that stuff.
Yeah. The questing system feels like a to-do list, and there is a dopamine reward to checking an item off the to-do list.
Certainly,
it's just one of those things that I'm like, is this fun or is this Farmville addictive? You know what I mean?
Yeah. One of the games I got on Switch too is Breath of the Wild, and I'm wondering, because I've only played like the first half an hour, I'm wondering if that might get in a bit along those lines as well.
I mean, I've only heard wonderful things about
Same.
Breath of the Wild.
Same. It's actually the first Zelda game I've ever played. That's a bit of a gaming sin, I know, but it's the truth.
I think the last Zelda game I played was on the Nintendo.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Wow. So, I mean, I've of all of the games I've played, Mario has been, or excuse me, Nintendo has been the least represented in the pantheon of things I've played over time.
Me too, like for the last, 15 years or so, I dare say. Yeah, I did have a Super Nintendo back in the day. But then once the Xbox came out, I was all about the Xbox, and then I jumped ship and went with PlayStation for a little while, and now I'm basically PC Master Race.
Yeah.
Until a couple of days ago.
And I'm watching season 4 of Gilmore Girls.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Which I'm enjoying, but I don't think anyone close to me who's heard me talk about the show would know that I was enjoying it. Because
you've talked about it a bit on Twitter, right? You've shared a couple of...
Yeah, and I think I initiated or rather set off a couple of defensive reactions with my commentary, which is not at all intended, and it's one of the reasons why I have not done it as much. But I think part of the joy of these kinds of shows, these sort of small town, picket fences or Northern Exposure or any of these is complaining about the dates of the characters or mistakes they've made, or just tell her, or whatever it is. But if you care enough to complain, then you're having a good time. You know what
Exactly,
I mean?
because if you weren't complaining, you wouldn't care, and you would stop
Yeah, I
watching.
care.
Essentially,
I like Rory. I like Lorelai. I like Melissa McCarthy's character. Can't remember her name right now. Rory has the worst taste in boys. But every time I tweet that, someone says, "Well, she's 17." I was like, "Yeah, that's the reason." Nonetheless, as someone
yeah.
who cares about her character, I'm like, "Damn it, Rory, work on your taste in men."
But yeah, that's one of my least favorite things in fiction is drama that derives from characters just not talking to each other.
Yeah,
It's frustrating.
and that is a thing. There's not too much of it. Mostly the joy is in the shows in the dialogue and sort of the small town life and all of that. So yeah, I'm enjoying that one. I'm thinking when I finish that show, I may invite a friend of the show, Lonnie from
Oh
Chipperish
yeah.
Media, on here because she has watched Gilmore, and we might have a conversation about the seasons, and that'll be the way of reviewing the show. That way, I don't have to make you watch it.
Cool. Yeah. Hey, you probably will anyway at some point. I'm sure you'll finish it. And you're like, oh my god, there's this scene and it's great. And you should watch it. I mean, that's essentially what happened with The Good Place, right? You watch the finale and you're like, Jack, you have to see it. And then we sort of watched it together, and then. Well, bits of it together, and then we got to the finale, and I cried for 40 of the 50 minutes that finale goes for. If again, I think I said it last week, but if you haven't seen The Good Place, please see it. It's good for the soul. It's wonderful.
It's wonderful. Well, we've been jibber jabbering quite a bit. I own that from my little diatribe to open the show, which you didn't know I was going to do, but neither did I.
But
So we had we asked for some comments on last week's podcast, Fear and Smoldering in Australia. Brandy Yalla says, how do you guys select the list of shame movies? It's not ones neither of you have seen. It's not classics. It's not one specific era or genre. It's not based on quality. Are you going through some AFI list with a weird specialty? Well, Brandy, Jack and I decided to do this. I told him about this thing that I believe that anyone who writes or does media criticism or whatever, it behooves them to consume as much of it as possible. Mm-hmm. And I felt like there were holes in the great films for me. Anything pre-1980s, mostly, that I hadn't seen. And so Jack was interested in the project.
Mm-hmm.
And
very much so, yes.
Once we got it in our minds to do it, we sat down and went through every category, every genre on IMDb?
Yeah, every genre, and I myself, I was also looking at Rotten Tomatoes. I think you looked at Roger Ebert's list of greatest films and whatnot.
And we looked at the AFI Top 100 list, and anything that was on there that one or both of us had not seen, we put on the list. We also put things on the list that are personal favorites that the other one had not seen. So for me, that was Arrival and Dr. Sleep and some of those.
Yeah. Me being the horror fan, I went and looked at some really classic horror like the Bela Lugosi 1931, I think it is, Dracula. I put that on there. I think Bride of Frankenstein, and then like some newer stuff like Eraserhead from David Lynch, I believe it is. And yeah, and the list is it's still growing to this day.
So we're at 280.
285, I think.
285. And then so at the end of each week, we use a random number generator to pick 3 options for the next one. So that we can veto choices if we want. So we had kind of a run of so bad they're good movies, which I don't like. We'll talk about in a minute. And had one of those occurred again in the 3 roles, I would have vetoed one of them because I just needed a break from that genre that I struggle with. And then we pick one of those three randomly, and that's the one we end up watching. So thank you for the question, Brandy.
Yes, thanks. We've also got a comment here from Carly Rich, who says, "Nice to meet you, Jack. Glad you aren't dead." Me too. Me too. It's good to be alive. Good podcast. Had one big, profound aha breakthrough moment based on something you two discussed. So I'm super grateful for that. Looking forward to seeing how this new dynamic will work. I think it could be really something. Take care, guys. Well, thanks, Carly.
Thank you, Carly. And finally, Tulkus. Tulkus, you told me one time what your name means, and I forgot. I apologize.
Yeah, that's a very recognizable character from the streams and whatnot.
Yeah,
Tulkus.
Excellent podcast, Ian. I love this. Your content is helping me recover from my last seizure and the anxiety that comes with the experience. Your gold friend. Thank you. I appreciate that. And Jack, you had another one you wanted to mention?
There's also a comment from our dear friend Sarah Ezat, who runs her own channel called The Costume Codex. She's also a moderator over on our Discord. She simply says, "I love you two." And, well, Sarah, we love
you too.
Very much so.
All right, let's talk movies.
Oh, here we go. This week on our movie nights, we watched two films.
Yeah,
the first being
were they both films.
Technically, yes.
Technically, okay, I'll take technically.
The first being The Room. Written, directed, and financed by and starring the absolute enigma that is Tommy Wiseau. Also starring Greg Sestero and Juliette Danielle. And, well, if you've been living under a rock for the last few years, or you go out of your way to avoid terrible films, it's about...
It's kind of hard to avoid, even going out of your way to avoid terrible films, it's kind of hard to avoid The Room.
Totally.
The Room is like one of the most memed in modern times terrible movies.
You would have at least seen a screenshot or something.
Yeah, it seems like every 20 years or so, whatever is the worst movie of all time gets kind of reinvented.
True.
Or whatever one is winning the conversation in the zeitgeist. I mean, the ones that I'm familiar with are like Ishtar, which does not... Ishtar's funny.
Yeah,
I will defend Ishtar, but Ishtar used to be the one in the 80s that everyone said was the worst movie of all time. Ed Wood came to light for a while, and so Plan 9 from Outer Space, or Glenn or Glenda, was considered one of the worst films. It's interesting, we talked about Ed Wood. Ed Wood, like Plan 9 from Outer Space and all of that, has an interesting parallel to The Room, in that there was a movie made about those terrible movies that I would probably rather watch than actually watch those terrible movies.
Okay.
If you haven't seen Ed Wood, directed by Tim Burton and starring Johnny Depp as Ed Wood with Bill Murray in it, it is wonderful.
Okay.
And Walter Matthau plays Bela Lugosi. No, not Walter Matthau. I'm forgetting his name right now. But anyway, and then The Room has...
just
the disaster
going back. Which is a great film. And I think, like, I would recommend watching the Disaster Artist and then watching the Room, because it'll give you a much greater appreciation for it. I think.
In fairness, you told me to do,
and you didn't do it.
I said I was going to do it. And then I didn't do it.
You didn't. But we can still watch it at some point. But it's interesting because this film came out in 2003 and went by unnoticed for quite some time. I mean, I don't know exactly when it started to gain the popularity that it has now, but it seems to exploded in the last 5 years or so, maybe even a bit less than that. But yeah, the film, it's about... there's a guy named Johnny, and everyone around Johnny's a bit of an asshole. And then some stuff. I don't.
What's it about?
It's about Johnny.
Is it?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a strange thing. But it's, yeah, as we were talking about, it's become famous in recent years and is now known as the Citizen Kane of bad films.
Yeah, I love that.
And my God,
go ahead. No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
And like, it's bad. It is truly awful. It's a masterclass in how not to make a film, and I freaking love it. I eat it up.
I love the description of Citizen Kane of bad films, because there's a famous scene in Citizen Kane where Orson Welles is an old man and his wife leaves him, and so he tears her room apart, and there's supposed to be the symbolism of him tearing down, like, his regrets and rage for the way his life has turned out. He's finally, he sort of finally breaks through. And there's the scene just like that in...
I wouldn't be surprised, because I believe that the "You Are Tearing Me Apart," Lisa, was intended, that line was intended as an homage to Jimmy Dean, "You're tearing me apart." But so much of this, yeah.
I was reminded of Citizen Kane when Tommy was walking around his room he shared with Lisa, knocking things down, and all their photos of corkscrews that they had, throwing them on
spoons.
The floor. Yeah.
Yeah. The story goes that all of the photos in the photo frames were just the stock photos that came with the frames when they bought them.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't afford to put real photos in the frames, I guess. The film, it cost $6 million, and it is believed that Tommy Wiseau paid for all of it, and that's why no one could really tell him no. But there was really ridiculous spending. Like, he bought two cameras, and he insisted the film be shot both digitally and on film. No one really knows why. And yeah, no one knows how he made his money and how he was able to finance it, but he did somehow.
Yeah.
But yeah, so much of it is just baffling. It's so odd and disjointed, and I love it. But I've got a taste for that thing.
Yeah, I've said before, I wish I had the bone in my body that allows me to enjoy the so bad they're good movies. Mm-hmm. I just don't. Right. They're really not fun for me. I mean, like we've said, who would want to have less fun?
Right.
If they had the choice.
Right.
Like, if you had the choice to, it's not, maybe it's pretentious, but if it is, it's a pretension that I'm not choosing.
I get it, but
I can't turn off the part of my brain that is watching it thinking, why is this cut so long?
Yeah.
Why is this edit so weird? What's
what's
with all the roses?
I've got all of those thoughts too watching it, but I enjoy that. I enjoy going, wait, why is this happening? What the hell is going on? Like, I have fun with that. It's like watching a train wreck, you shouldn't watch, but you can't help it.
Yeah.
That's how it is for me anyway. But yeah, it's an odd film. It's disjointed. There are scenes that don't serve any purpose and make no sense. There's one scene where four of the guys, Johnny, Mark, Denny, and some other dude, they decide to go outside and play football whilst wearing tuxedos. Like, why? I don't know. Don't know.
That's either the first or the second, or the third football sequence in the movie.
Yeah, I think there's three of them.
Throw the football around.
Yeah, and the dialogue too is very like, each character talks the same. They all sound like the same person. There is no individuality in the way they speak or anything. Like, it's you can tell Tommy wrote it all himself, because there's just no there, there's no individuality per personality. They all talk exactly the same.
Yeah, and I can't remember. I think there were 4 sex scenes, awful sex scenes, and 1 implied sex scene before the 30-minute mark in the movie.
Yeah, there was 3 in the first 30 minutes, I think. And in the first one, it's so, like, first of all, Tommy's making more noise than Juliet Daniel or Lisa is. And for some reason, he looks like he's, like, humping her belly button.
It's... I mean, without getting into the it did make me realize... I suppose I hadn't thought about how there's actually an art to a good sex scene in a movie.
Right.
And it's this isn't not just point the... You know, there is something to the performance. There is something to the... I've never really thought about that. I've never had cause to think about that, because I've never seen sex scenes that made me want to have sex so little the way these did. I mean, they were repugnant.
For me, it was...
sequences.
A big part of it too was the music during the sex scenes. It was just like cheesy R&B, like trying to be sexy, and because of that, it just wasn't.
And they
sexy.
have the drapes, and there's one scene where she's topless and he's like shaking rose petals over her, and they're giggling together. It's so painful.
I think and in the second scene with Johnny and Lisa, he pulls out a rose as well, and we're a bit confused by his obsession with roses. But what I've read is that apparently Tommy wanted to do a second sex scene, but Juliet Daniel Danielle, I should say, sorry, she was too uncomfortable to film a second sex scene, so they had to use leftover footage from the first one. That's why you see a rose, I'm assuming.
Yeah, they're not additive. They're not.
No.
They're you know, they look uncomfortable. They look awkward.
And they're uncomfortably long too, like much longer than they need to be.
Yeah.
And then there's this gratuitous shot of Tommy Wiseau's ass, and I'm just like, why? What? Please? No. Like.
Yeah. Again, for me, it's. I think I appreciated all the meme stuff about the film, and I think if I had to watch these movies in 30-second increments, I would have more fun with them.
Right.
The high doggy in the flower shop scene is very funny. You're tearing me apart, Lisa, is funny. Yeah. It's just the huge chunks. My experience decays into just surreal nausea.
Right.
With like, why are these people talking this way? Yeah. You know. Anyway.
Yeah, never mind.
Yeah, it's okay. It's a bit like the I did a Nerd Shipper video called "The Last Time I Got High," where I talked about sensory overload. I hate smoking weed, and I had an experience where I was just it causes me so much anxiety.
Right.
And watching The Room made me feel like that way. I had that duplicate experience of just like, you know, I would have rather have been having a conversation with you or playing Destiny or watching anything redeeming.
Yeah. So, like...
But I wish I was the other way.
Right. And of course, why wouldn't you want to have more fun?
Yeah.
But if anyone listening hasn't seen it, I would recommend seeing it, but I wouldn't recommend watching it alone. Get a group of friends together and check it out.
Yeah, I can't I can't.
That's only if you have a taste for that kind of thing. If you don't, I just wouldn't bother. But I yeah, it's a baffling film, and it doesn't make sense. And but I think what Tommy Wiseau was going for, I think he wanted to write like a tragic hero story, like a guy who sort of try as he might, he just gets his heart ripped out and stomped on. At least I think that's what he was going for. And personally, I think, now this is just a theory. I'm not basing this on anything other than just my own opinion, but I think it's probably like a self-insert kind of story. I think some of the events of the film actually happened to Tommy at some point throughout his life, and that would kind of explain why it plays out the way it does and why it's so disjointed, because I think he insisted on them playing out the way that they played out in his life. But the problem is that we're talking about something, an event in his life that involved probably several people, but he's only telling it from one person's perspective, his own. So it's and because of that, it doesn't feel as natural, and it's just weird because, like,
well, I mean, from that perspective, if you're going to apply that lens, the Johnny being so underdeveloped, he's the least developed character. There's no complexity. There's no.
Yet he's the main character.
Yeah, if that whole thing is based on events in Tommy Wiseau's life, that shows a profound lack of self-awareness. Him being the least developed character means that everything that he has no sense of events that brought that on, or events that whatever. Yeah, you know, he just hates whoever Lisa was in his life. Exactly. And wanted to make a hate piece about her, and I feel terrible for the actress. You know, when we watched that movie, because I was like, anyway.
And while we were, you made me laugh while we were watching. At first, you said, like, has he seen a movie before?
Yeah.
And then you were like, wait, has he even had a conversation with someone before?
Yeah, it's a lot. And then you watch the sex scenes, it's like, has he had sex before? Because everything feels dissonant and off and awkward and wrong.
Yeah. And just lastly, before we move on, a friend of mine the other night was telling me about a book written by Greg Sestero. It's called, let me look at my notes here, The Disaster Artist, My Life Inside the Room, the greatest bad movie ever made. I haven't read it myself, but my friend was telling me that it's not only an interesting read, but it's also hilarious. She said that pretty much every page had something that made her laugh, like anecdotes about the making of the room. I plan on checking out myself at some point.
I think that's the book that the movie was based on, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. The Disaster Artist. Yeah.
After that, we watched. This is one of the reasons why I love this project.
Yeah.
So we followed up the room with My Fair Lady, a 1964 musical starring Audrey Hepburn and Rex Harrison. Rex Harrison plays a professor who makes a bet that he can take a poor, uneducated flower girl off the street and, by teaching her phonetics, pass her off as a lady, which had a much greater connotation from the period that the movie is from, in front of royals. Jack, what did you think of it?
I was so surprised, man. I had a lot more fun with it than I thought I would. I'm not hugely into musicals.
Yeah.
My kind of musical is like for example, I love Grease, stuff like that. I like movies that have songs in them. You know what I mean? And this was pretty much that. But yeah, in spite of like some dated ideas and comedy surrounding, you know, gender roles and all of that stuff, I liked it a lot. And I think a huge part of for me was Audrey Hepburn as Eliza Doolittle. She was so just charming
Yeah.
and funny, and she was like a ray of sunshine. Yeah. While I was researching the film, I found apparently Julie Andrews was first considered for the role because she was in the Broadway version, I think.
Where I think it was the London. I think it
Oh, it wasn't
originally
Broadway.
aired. Yeah,
Okay.
if I
Yeah.
remember correctly. But
Yeah.
yes, she was in the original performance of it
Yeah.
as a staged version.
And she was considered for the role in the film, but I don't know. Like Julie Andrews is she's a legend in her own right, of course, but I just don't think anyone could have given it the same sort of pizzazz and the same charm that Audrey Hepburn did. To be honest,
Yeah, by the end of the film, I mean, Julie Andrews is staggering. But
yeah,
by
she's
the
Julie Andrews.
yeah, by the end of the film, I don't think I can ever imagine that with anyone other than Audrey Hepburn in it. I realized after we'd watched it that was not the first time I think I saw that in a stage play in college.
Oh wow,
Yeah, so like sometime in the late '90s, early 2000s, I saw a version of that performed by college students, and it's not Grease.
no,
It's a little bit more, which I think I saw done in high school. It's a little bit more of a, it's a little bit more technical. It's a little bit
right.
more. Watching it, I could very easily imagine it done poorly.
Oh, easily.
Do you know what I
Easily,
mean?
Yeah.
Especially
Yeah,
because
and I'm sure it has been done poorly many times.
yeah.
Like on stage.
I try not to have expectations one way or another whenever we watch things. I would say, it's the whole thing with The Room. I'm always trying to enjoy whatever we're watching. I love loving things. And we've watched some things that, like The Red Shoes, that even halfway through, I was like, I'm having a miserable time, but I was looking up, why do people love this? I want to understand the perspective of why people enjoy this film. But so that said, when I saw that My Fair Lady had an almost 3-hour runtime, I got a little nervous.
I had the same feeling.
Yeah, we haven't allowed.
I was like, oh, I'm going to need a lot of coffee for this one.
We have not had a lot of great experiences yet with films that approach or eclipse the 3-hour marker.
Not at all.
But this one flew by. Songs fell into two categories: actual songs, "Just You Wait," Henry Higgins with a chorus. They're catchy. And then a whole bunch of what I would call spoken rhyming poetry
Yeah.
with music in the background. And we were thinking it was maybe the actors or performers that were the problem, but I don't think that's the case. Audrey Hepburn is actually dubbed by a different singer in a few sequences.
Yeah.
So if the actor had been struggling with the music, they just would have dubbed them or done something differently. It was that particular style of the beat poetry is the wrong description of it, but that particular style of like singing poems or chanting poems to music. Anyway, flew by. This is the third film of Audrey Hepburn's I've watched. I've seen Roman Holiday, and the last movie she was ever in, Steven Spielberg's Always.
I had only seen Breakfast at Tiffany's.
Yeah, which I haven't seen.
I believe.
And she, as you said, she just has a quality. Obviously, she's one of the most beautiful actresses of all time. That isn't what we're talking about. That I wrote the same thing you did. Exudes sunshine.
Yeah.
Something
Absolutely wonderful.
like we were talking about it. I think two of the most beautiful, like when you think about the most beautiful actresses from that time, the ones that come to mind are Audrey Hepburn and Grace Kelly.
Yep.
I'm thinking Grace Kelly in To Catch a Thief, or was she in North by Northwest? I specifically
Not
remember.
sure.
Oh, Rear Window. She,
And you've got the likes of like Elizabeth Taylor and Marilyn Monroe.
yeah, but Audrey Hepburn, more than any of the ones that we mentioned, just has that
Yeah, there's
quality
something
of
about her.
something
It's
that is.
it's a brightness. I think.
Yeah.
It's yeah.
She and Rex Harrison in the movie are blindingly charismatic. Rex Harrison, we might say problematically so. He plays this misogynist douchebag, and he actually has a song, "Why Can't a Woman Be More Like a Man?" But he's so watchable and charming that, again, for me, I think it would be easy for someone to mistake the things he says as things we're supposed to believe if they wanted to, because he's so captivating in the part
Right.
of this jerk. The closest the only comparison I could think of was like the Han Solo roguish. Seems a little cool, but that's not close enough. I don't know how to explain it.
I also think they tried to it was very intentional to make him kind of a douche but still likable. I think that was
Well,
very deliberate.
He's such a featured character that it's a long movie. It's too long a movie to have him be a jerk without likability. Whatever Rex Harrison's charisma is in that particular role, which is like clever and cute, or I don't know how to describe.
Yeah.
It's so funny the
I know what you're
indiscernible
saying.
nature of some of these performances.
Yeah.
And it's important. It's important, which I'll get into in a minute. But given the
There was
history
almost,
of this musical
there was
that I looked
almost
up,
there was like an innocence about him. I think I would say, because he wasn't intentionally mean. You know what I mean? He was just.
well, he has a
I don't
line in
know.
the play or in the movie where he says he treats everyone the same way. He's an equal opportunity jerk to everyone, but that's not actually true. His friend in the movie, who's there, who he makes the bet with that he can turn Audrey Hepburn into a lady. He has a bet with his friend, and he treats his friend fine the entire movie.
True.
There's no song about why can't his friend be more like him, but there is why can't a woman be more like a man. But you mentioned the way some of the stuff, you said some of the stuff hasn't aged. The whole concept of a man knowing the way a woman is supposed to be is so weird. Higgins makes fun of Eliza constantly, and her father in the musical is written as a character who is a poor drunk who likes being lazy and not working, which feels like a classist interpretation of poverty.
Yeah.
The whole thing has sort of difficult class questions.
Yeah, I found that pretty frustrating. All of that stuff. Especially the stuff relating to like gender roles and whatnot. I did try to sort of see it through the lens of its time.
Sure.
But
Well,
that was
inevitably.
yeah, like, but that was kind of difficult. Like, it didn't necessarily ruin the film for me, but that's I think that's solely because as we've said, Rex Harrison and Audrey Hepburn was so damn charming. They
Yeah.
were just
Well, I mean,
really
in the
good.
song, there are catchy songs. Even the with a little bit, which is just
Yeah.
very like it's being lazy and cheating on my wife, but with a little bit, we'll get away. Her dad's supposed to be charming, and just through a modern lens, we're like,
Yeah.
but we say all of this again, acknowledging we really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just think
it
part of the reason I like watching stuff with you is the discussion
yeah.
about these things, and I think the contrast is yes, everything needs to be taken in a time, or sort of thought about in the context that it was made or the age that it's trying to reflect. But that doesn't mean you don't engage with the material, or you don't
Exactly.
you don't take the time to consider it through a modern lens.
Yeah.
And
right.
then you enjoy what there is to enjoy.
Exactly.
But to me, that's part of the process of enjoying whatever it is. Gun's a great example. Gun in Warzone, that is such an old, a cliche trope / stereotype at this point.
The street gang kind of deal.
Yeah, and I think that when we watch that stuff, that's what there is to say. Yeah, this sucks. And J. August Richards does a great job with it, and I love the scene between he and his sister, and the drama is wonderful, and but it does need that acknowledgement of, at least for me watching it, I need to just go, why am I uncomfortable? Oh, because representation and all of that, and this is a problem, and okay, and then I can kind of go, let's see what's good here.
Yeah. I also think with all the films from like the 50s and 60s, you have to make certain concessions in a way, and also just understand that you're going to see something very different from the entertainment that we see today. You have to what's the word I'm looking for? You need to kind of I guess change your, not your perspective, but try and see it.
Your expectations.
Expectations.
Yeah.
There's a particular way to watch films of this era, I think.
Yeah, so Higgins abuses Eliza through much of it, verbally spars with her constantly. I mean, they do have a back and forth kind of relationship through the whole thing, and then she passes the test, wins him the bet in a stunning moment where she's presented to royalty and wins everyone in the crowd and so forth. And Higgins takes all responsibility for it, owns it, makes her feel like she's nothing. She leaves, by the way, spoilers for My Fair Lady, I guess. She leaves him and says she's not coming back. And then
we cheered. We were like, yes!
You don't need him.
Yeah.
You don't need him.
Girl.
And then she comes back at the end of the film. And there's a...
That annoyed me.
Yeah. There's a... It ends with him realizing that he has feelings for her, but when she comes back saying, fetch my slippers for me, Eliza, which I think there's multiple readings.
Yeah, I think
potential readings.
I think one of the readings you could take was that, because there is leading up to that final scene, we see Higgins all sad and dejected, and as if he's contemplating the error of his ways, so to speak. And so we could make the assumption that he is a changed man, but there's not enough, though. And
Audrey Hepburn is the one who has to make the choice to come back despite his abuse. So I read a little bit about the history of it that I wanted to share. The musical was based on a stage play called Pygmalion by George Bernard Shaw, which in turn was based on the Greek myth, or was an interpretation of inspired by the Greek myth, Pygmalion, in which a Greek king and sculptor falls in love with one of his sculptures when it comes to life. Which, given the plot of the movie, you can see the implications there. I read the wiki article about the play, Pygmalion, and it's identical to My Fair Lady. Essentially, there's minor changes throughout, except for the final scene. In the play, Eliza and Higgins fight. Eliza threatens to teach phonetics, and this is the thing that actually enrages Higgins, that she would use the knowledge that he gave her to have power in the world. And Eliza realizes that she has power over Higgins and walks out on him, while he tells her to get groceries, and the play ends. That's the end of the play. So Eliza leaves Higgins in the play, and it ends. All of that stuff is in My Fair Lady, except there's another scene where Higgins realizes he's in love with her, and then she comes back and he says, fetch my slippers. During the run of the play, the producers and audiences wanted the play to have a happy ending, And so they eventually shaped one in which Eliza returns to Higgins and they get married. George Bernard Shaw hated the ending and wrote an essay explaining why the play had to end the way he had written. It was the only ending that protected Eliza's integrity. And that was in 1914.
That's very ahead of its time.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it changes.
Yeah.
It makes the whole thing the whole narrative becomes this empowering, progressive story of Eliza sort of casting off the chains of, or taking the power of class and education to cast off kind of sexism and misogyny and so forth.
Yeah.
And then the 1964 version comes along, and I don't think it's hyperbolic to say it's one of the most iconic musicals of all time.
Not easily.
Top tier is probably Sound of Music, Wizard of Oz, though I think it's interesting that I don't think of Wizard of Oz as a musical.
Me neither. The Wizard of Oz is... Most people are so surprised to learn this, but that's like top 10 favorite films for me. I love The Wizard of Oz, but I think I said earlier, how some musicals to me are like films with songs in them, and that's how I see The Wizard of Oz. Yeah.
Yeah, in my head, that isn't in that genre. It's just a classic film.
Yeah.
But it's weird how that's wrong, is what I'm saying. It is a musical by any standard of the term. It's just mentally, it's funny how we sort of get around those things. But anyway, right in the next tier, I think there's musicals like My Fair Lady and ones of that ilk. I actually don't know musicals well enough. I'm just saying that
Singing
one,
in the Rain.
Yeah. But it's funny that the film goes with the diet version of the ending that George Bernard Shaw hated, where she comes back to Higgins.
The ending didn't ruin it for me, but I would have preferred it to end with her being like, yeah, screw you, and walking out and going and living happily ever after.
Higgins changes.
Yeah, which I think they tried to imply, but it wasn't enough.
They implied, but then now there again. I think there's a reading of it where you can say that he and Eliza have a combative relationship, and they love that they have a combative relationship. And so she comes back, and he re-engages with their combative relationship because now they both realize that yada yada yada. Mm-hmm. But again, just like Rex Harrison being so charismatic, that if you wanted to misinterpret the material, it's not trying very hard to prevent you from doing that. And I don't think that, maybe George Bernard Shaw was trying to make a statement, but I don't think that My Fair Lady was trying to make a socio-political statement about
No. I think it was just
gender
trying to be cute.
Yeah. But nonetheless, it's there. I mean, it's volatile. There are volatile ideas within the musical itself. So, it's funny. It has kind of the opposite final scene effect of Some Like It Hot. Mm-hmm. The old man in the boat with Jack Lemmon, and Jack Lemmon pulls off his wig and says, screw it, Peter, I'm a man."
Yeah,
and the old man perfect. Says, "Nobody's perfect," which is this like lovely love is love kind of thing.
Yeah. Gorgeous.
Yeah, that to me made the movie, made the experience of the film. I was like, okay.
It turned it into something so much more endearing for me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and then this one has that ending where we all went, "No, Eliza, no."
Yeah, it didn't ruin it, like I said, but it was like, oh, come on.
Yeah. Yeah, but either way, we had a great time. It was a lot of fun. Great production. The two leads are unbelievable.
Yeah. The set designs were fantastic, and the costuming was great. Yeah, really well made film for its time.
All right, so Jack, a conversation I've been dreading all week.
It is time, buddy. It is time.
Let's talk about Mr. Joss Whedon. Kind of.
Caveat there, kind of.
Let me explain how this conversation is going to go. Now, first of all, unfortunately, poor Jack here, there are just going to be certain circumstances where things that relate to the channel come up, and this is the medium where I have to talk
Sure.
about them.
Yeah.
So, chime in, man, as you have thoughts, of course. But
Will do.
I do have a prepared statement for people listening.
But we're, as we've discussed, like, we've talked about this subject a lot the last couple of days, and you and I agree very much, and so I don't have a great deal to say beyond what you have to say. So yeah.
But this is I'm going to qualify this conversation quite a bit, and it would be fair to say that whenever I wake up in the morning and I see that Joss is trending in social media, I think to myself, is today the day that I'm going to go get a job at Office Max? Because now that's an irrational sort of fear, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So here's the deal. If for anyone listening, if you're wondering what there is to talk about or why Joss might be in the news, I'm not going to cover any of that stuff. You're free to Google, go read up on them to your heart's content. I started Passion of the Nerd as a place where I could examine and talk about art and media that I find inspiring, or to make things to entertain people and to tell my own stories. I do not want to start talking about gossip or speculating on celebrity stories. I'm not sure that I can think of a pursuit that sounds more tedious, exhausting, and less interesting to me than that. I don't do takedown videos. I don't do attack videos. Even writing negative reviews of episodes or movies is one of my least favorite pursuits. Talking about this stuff struck me as serving no other purpose than to be some sort of performative statement where I say, oh, I'm not with him. But that requires, but I'm just not interested in that. And that requires a whole bunch of concessions to news stories and all of this other garbage. Let me just bear with me. Let me keep going. And look, issues of gaslighting, abuse of power, potential douchebaggery are important things for us to talk about as a culture. And they are being talked about. But I'm not a sociologist. I'm the guy that talks about vampire soul cannon and puts red arrows on bare-chested men. However, that has been my... there was a comment on a recent video that spawned a pretty thoughtful discussion and made me rethink my position slightly. So, in no particular order... Number one, I can't ignore the fact that the bulk of the work I've done so far focuses primarily on Whedon's work. A few people use the term love letter to the Whedonverse, and I think that's fair. I didn't necessarily set out from the start to make that the case, but here we are, such that admittedly, I have that question going on of, is there ever going to be something in the news that tanks the thing that I've decided to make my full-time career because I haven't diversified content enough? So that's the first thing. Number two, I have at various times in episode guides talked about events outside of the episodes itself or the show, including things like Whedon's stated philosophy in interviews, Glenn Quinn, Seth Green, and I can't remember the actress's name right now, Maggie, leaving season 4. And so maybe it's unclear when I'm willing to do that. I think I got the sense from this thread that I read that some people look at the fact that I do talk about things outside of the show from time to time, but have been ignoring the Joss Whedon news stories that have been going by. So maybe it's unclear when I do both, was number two. Number three, other than the channel appearing to be a love letter to his stuff, there are plenty of videos on the channel that praise Whedon's script, direction, etc. I've used him as a keyword tag on YouTube numerous times, and when a commenter pointed this out as a potential willingness to capitalize off of using his name when it suits me, as opposed to ignoring potential misdeeds. I want to address that in a minute. Mostly to me that comes down to just YouTube keywording and the way all of that stuff works. Number 4, it's always important for me to own the fact, before we get into any of this, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm making this up as I go along. So I'm going to share with you the thoughts that I've had so far, and I'm going to kind of run through these 4 points in reference to some of this stuff. Anyway, after reading that comment chain, I opened a poll on the main channel asking, do you want me to weigh in on Joss Whedon, the public figure? That question was a little more open-ended than I intended. YouTube doesn't edit it after you start a poll, which makes perfect sense to me. You don't want to change the thing that people thought they were voting on. What I meant was, do you want me to weigh in on my approach to Joss Whedon, the public figure? But still, me leaving things so general generated a bunch of responses from you guys that I really found interesting. Jack, you want to read the first one?
From Pluto says, I won't vote one way or the other, which we totally respect, of course. It's entirely up to you. I think we all know that Joss is a flawed human being, as pretty much all of us. We're all flawed in one way or another.
That's what this podcast is about.
Yes. Joss is a flawed human being, much like his characters. So discussing his terrible personal behavior over the years to his employees and wife just seems, well, pointless. Pointless isn't the correct word. It seems unhelpful. We know what he has done is bad. We can only hope that he understands that and makes the decision to change for himself, or has hopefully already been working towards changing himself. And I mean, I talk a lot about redemption, and I believe somebody should be able to do that. Not that I'm commenting one way or another on this, but yeah, redemption's an important thing.
Eva Luna says, difficult question. On the one hand, it would be an interesting topic to take on. On the other hand, it might be a hard thing to do. Let's face it, you would be talking about someone you've never met before, based on what is, at the moment, mostly hearsay. Then again, I'd be interested to hear what you'd make of the whole thing. So yes, I think. Wait, no. Maybe? Eva, you expressed my feelings about this completely.
Mine too. We've also got another one from Queen in the North. I've actually been wanting to comment about this on a video if you mentioned trying to not judge the art by the artist again. I don't think there's 100% correct answer, but it does feel a bit disingenuous to say that and then dive into all of these works and beliefs that Whedon has, such as absurdism, etc., that impact his writing.
Right.
Because that is absolutely all about how the artist affects the art, and to act like, and to act like the way he has treated women and others doesn't have an impact on his work the same way feels wrong. Again, I don't expect you to have an answer.
That's
but
good.
Just look at how his treatment of Charisma Carpenter changed Cordelia.
Okay, so there's a couple of things in what Queen in the North said here. First of all, I think I apologize for Queen. I assume she says is suggesting that I was making the death of the author. Now let me lead with, I'm not 100% clear on art versus the artist versus death of the author, which are separate concepts. Death of the author, if I remember correctly, is a way of analyzing a piece of fiction or media in which the author, we don't consider the author as a part of it. We just consider the work itself. Obviously, I don't do that. Because I've brought in Whedon, I've brought in his philosophy and so forth. My understanding of art versus the artist is something different. So that's something I'll get to in a minute. Many people mention Charisma Carpenter and how that changed Cordelia. I agree. I'll talk about that in a second. But it was a great comment. All of these, by the way, great comments. And I loved the wide variety of feedback and thoughts that everyone had. Anywhere from, you're not TMZ, to, no, I think it would be interesting and here's why.
Yeah, it was difficult to choose which comments to feature because there was so many great ones.
Yeah. Laura FJS said, I I don't think you should comment on it because it won't change anything. I studied drama, TV, and film, and I can tell you now all people in the world are passionate, and with passion can come frustration. None of what I've heard has shocked me. He's fully involved and passionate about all his projects, which is why his work means so much to so many. Laura, we appreciate the comment.
Yep. We have another one from Anna Prados. I think it's relevant in context for the episodes or shows themselves, but I don't like it when it takes on personal form, because most of what it's said is rumor mongering, and it will most probably attract haters independent of the review itself. That anything else, it will most likely probably attract.
I think she means haters more than anything else.
Yeah. So when his personal becomes relevant on a guide, signal it there.
I'm gonna skip down here. Sapphire says, I think in the context of the show, when exploring themes or choices made by the creators, commenting on the wider knowledge we have as viewers in the present can be very relevant. My first thought is Xander and about how a lot of his characterization could be seen as a self-insert by Joss. Huge story decisions in the run seem to have been born from a place of trying to regain control of the narrative surrounding certain characters. William the Bloody, that was a whole thing with James Marsters, who, again, was a new piece of news in a podcast that was, I thought, taken out of context, but we're not getting into the specific things. I think while it could be easier, and I do understand why people prefer to see the text as separate from its creators, that's, again, death of the author, I think. We don't experience the text separately from our own lives, but as part of it. In bypassing exploring certain elements of the Buffyverse creation, we might be missing opportunities for growth in our understanding and enjoyment of the work. That's a wonderful comment. Thank you, Sapphire.
And last one here from Catherine Lakin. You, of course, should if you want to, but that would be a video I would skip. Totally understand that.
I would skip it too.
I probably would as well. Yeah. Death of the author, not to mention hundreds of people were involved in making these shows, which is a very good point, I think. Would you also then make a video about Nicholas Brendon? Just feels like a part of art that really doesn't interest me. But again, if you feel compelled, I wouldn't tell you not to. I would just personally not watch. Totally fair enough.
Thank you, Catherine, for the comment. Yes. We appreciate it. All of these comments collectively have little elements of things that are part of my response here, which is why I thought it was interesting. We're all culturally, this is not a new thing, you know. There's been great art made by artists who were. I don't even want to go there. Again, I'm trying to avoid certain pitfalls and traps to this conversation. So let me stick with what I wrote here. In my mind, there are two things to speak to. The first is my approach to the content on the channel with regard to stories that exist outside of the episodes. The second, and for anyone listening, and that's mostly just for anyone listening to this podcast who I assume you're interested in Jack and I, because we're sort of the subjects of this podcast. So the second thing is my approach as an individual to these kinds of stories. So when it comes to the channel, I'm sure someone can find exceptions in the hundreds of videos I've made, but generally speaking, my approach to any stories related to cast and crew from the movies or shows that I talk about, whether that was Nicholas Brendon's personal life, Adam Baldwin's politics, or anything around Joss, has been to ignore it. These shows are made by hundreds of people. I'm not interested in their personal lives. The only exception is if the story or detail itself had some effect on the episode, season of the show, or thesis of the essay I'm writing. All of these examples I brought up earlier, from Whedon's philosophy to Glenn Quinn's personal struggles to Oz and Maggie's departure in season 4, fell under that banner. They all had direct connections to the stuff that I wanted to talk about in the videos, so the thesis of the essay, or they affected the outcome of the season. poor Glenn Quinn's situation was a major turn for what happened to the show. So there was no way of doing the show justice without talking about it. So in my mind, that's the line for me when it comes to the channel. Now, obviously, Joss had a bigger hand than most of the hundreds, but the fact that remains that without context in an episode or an essay, there's no reason for it to be in a video. You could argue that Joss's reported personal life points to the fact that he isn't someone who should be held up as some sort of feminist ideal. But there was already lots of evidence in Buffy itself that no one should have been doing that. Buffy was groundbreaking and a huge ideological step, but before any of the Whedon news stories came to light, there was already a ton of discussion on its issues, on the things that it did poorly, what I've referred to in the episode guides as its dated feminism. A number of the comments brought up Cordelia and Charisma Carpenter's treatment in Season 4. I'm not on Season 4 yet. I've been planning on talking about that debacle for years now. That absolutely had a major impact on the storylines for the season. Charisma recently did an interview on a podcast I've saved that will be included when we get there, talking about her experience of getting pregnant, trying to inform the cast and crew, and the ways in which that was managed. So Angel Season 4 is going to be a challenge to talk about regardless. It's, for me, the most difficult and frustrating season of the show to address. What I'm probably going to do is lead with a, before we get to Angel Season 4 video, that dips into all of that. So that's my mentality with the channel. Speaking just personally, now that I'm 40, which I keep coming back to, yes, it's a big deal for me. It may not be a big deal, but it is a big deal for me. I've officially been around long enough to develop a rich history in which some creators of things I love turn out to be questionable or have questionable acts revealed. The Lethal Weapon series may be the first romantic comedies I ever enjoyed. Yes, they were romantic comedies.
Yeah, I feel you in there, man. Like, Mel Gibson has been quite a controversial figure for a while now. But Braveheart is one of my favorite films of all time. As a historical piece, it's complete nonsense, but that's a rant for another day. Right. But as a film and a story and, a narrative, I really like it. And it's made by someone who's very controversial. So,
yeah. Parks and Recreation is one of my favorite comfy, blanky television shows. But now Tom's approach to dating feels less amusing.
Yeah. As I said earlier, I'm up to the last season, and from the very beginning, Tom's whole shtick has been irritating. For the reasons you just mentioned, he's probably my least favorite character, and I think that trope, the archetype of the horny, womanizing playboy, is just tiresome and old. And if you're gonna do that, do something different with it. And with the exception of a couple of endearing moments, I haven't really done a lot with that.
Yeah. There's a long list. The first pop album I ever fell in love with was Michael Jackson's Thriller. I thought Louis C.K.'s openness about male sexuality and his routines was sometimes thoughtful and refreshing. Some of the first movies I enjoyed that didn't feature explosions or animated characters were made by Woody Allen. And I first learned to tell a joke, as well as understand the music of a good story, by memorizing routines of Bill Cosby's album himself. And I still have them memorized. I'm never going to recite them again in public, but I still have them memorized. Now, here's the thing. Within that group, there's probably a spectrum for measuring these men that ranges from made a mistake to turdish human bummer to actual living monster. Where they fall into that spectrum and why is not the fodder for this podcast. What to do with the things they've made is. But because of the fact that this sort of thing happens all the time, I think I personally started to unconsciously build that muscle of celebrating the art and not the artist. You cannot, if you're doing an examination or having a conversation of the work itself, I don't really believe in death of the author. I don't think that you can have that conversation without an examination of intent and philosophy and so forth. I think it's an inevitable part of it, even though I think ultimately we get to decide. We say, as the people consuming the art, what it all means. But for what I do in the examination, that is a part of it. Lindsey Ellis put out a great video on another creator in the news right now, J.K. Rowling. I'll link to it in the show notes. But she talked about how when a problematic creator like Rowling is doing damage, further consumption of her work empowers her even more. I'm not doing her argument justice, which is why I'll link to it down below. But I'm also not sure I agree with that completely. I've been doing a lot of reading this past week and read some great articles I'll link to in the show notes, including one in the New York Times in which culture critic Josephine Livingston said, "I consider Woody Allen and Roman Polanski's movies gifts to me and to the culture, even when they're bad, and I'm not giving them back," she said. "I don't want Allen and Polanski to have control over their own legacies or even their own works. If they don't get to dictate how I interpret their films, then they don't get to control anything about the film industry. We, the viewers, do."
I love that.
Yeah, and I mean, Roman Polanski, I forgot to include. I'm just not a big consumer of his work. He's one of the most notorious of these kinds of things. And again, I acknowledge that there is a spectrum to either making a mistake in public all the way on up, and I'm not placing anyone in that spectrum. We're just talking about how we, as consumers of media, react when a creator of something we treasure experiences that in the public eye. Listening to Lindsey talk about J.K. Rowling, the difference between J.K. and Woody Allen or Polanski is that J.K. is very active on social media. She's very public. She still has a lot of power and control over her IP. But Rowling is already rich. She's already powerful, and if we boycott her work, it strikes me that a lot of people in the trans community or allies of who grew up with Harry Potter and probably gained strength from it now don't have that connection to that piece of art or media. And I realize that it's something that everyone in that position of being inspired by Harry and Hermione and everyone who feels let down by JK's philosophy needs to work out for themselves. But the idea of throwing the art away, to me, feels like a mistake. And again, I apologize if I'm misrepresenting Lindsey's idea. But boycotting counters a negative with a negative by removing that further possibility of emotional resonance and connection to. Personally, I'm not a huge Harry Potter fan, but I wouldn't call it great art, and yet it has connected with so many people, has informed the childhoods of so many people. So my opinion looks irrelevant in the face of that. And wherever Joss falls on that spectrum I mentioned earlier, which is not for me to debate or talk about, Willow and Tara were the first time that many people felt seen in media. I've received dozens of letters from people telling me the show saved their lives. The comments on my video for Untouched and the one I did for The Body are vulnerable and heartbreaking from people sharing about the way these episodes touched their lives. Those people deserve Buffy. And that, to me, is the importance and significance of art versus the artist, which I accept I maybe screwed up this entire time. So are there other approaches besides, is it a binary thing? Do we empower JK or do we lose Harry Potter? And I just think maybe that is not the case. Maybe we're not stuck between that binary thing. For instance, and I'm just throwing this out. I don't know. I'm just throwing this out there as an idea. For every dollar you spend on Harry Potter, you donate to the Trevor Project or the National Center for Transgender Equality. do we as a community endorse pirating those movies, which, again, thousands of other people worked on? I don't know. I'm just saying I think this is something we're sorting out as a culture at the moment. And in case I didn't mention this, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm making this up as I go along. So you should not listen to me, but figure it out for yourself.
Man. Well said, well said. Going back to what you said about the comments that people left, the touching comments on, the video from the body and stuff, you said those people deserve Buffy, and I totally agree. And going back to that quote you shared, Buffy is also a gift for me that I'm not willing to give back. I mean, it's changed my life, like, quite literally, like on a personal level, but it also, like, you and I wouldn't be friends if it weren't for Buffy. We would never have met. And I've got a lot of friends that I know simply because of Buffy, and, like, you and I have had some incredible experiences together because of Buffy, and that's a wonderful thing, I think.
Yeah, that was now that I'm coming out of it, I realized that was all a little ranty. That wasn't intended to be ranty, and I apologize if it came out that way. It's very hard for me to explain how much this stresses me out. Whenever a news story about Joss hits the media, and again, nothing I said was intended to be a discussion of those things or any of that stuff. If we're wherever that spectrum is for anyone, wherever someone puts Joss in that spectrum, then you have those decisions that you have to make as an individual. And I'm not saying where he belongs in that spectrum. I don't want to have that discussion. We're not taking a stance
here either way.
But I did think it was important to talk about my philosophy for the things I choose to bring into episode guides. And sort of individually where I stand, which is like, I just do not deify creators or artists. Celebrate the work. And I say that probably being guilty of some Whedon wank.
Me too.
Early on in the episode guide, or recently, I don't know.
I've got an autograph collection full of autographs from cast members at the show and other actors and whatnot. So, I mean, I can't talk.
Yeah, well, I mean, and holy cow, am I biased. If someone's got a bias, it's this guy. My livelihood.
And I think most people who claim to be unbiased are full of shit. We've all got a bias somewhere.
It fills me with stress and anxiety, but I think the past week was important for me to spend time clarifying and thinking about my approach when it comes to the channel and my personal approach.
I think it's helped you very much on a personal level. As much as you have struggled with it, it's helped you to sort of reaffirm some things and maybe figure some other things out and whatnot.
Yeah. But again, tons of bias. My livelihood depends. Currently, it depends on the man's work. I've met many of the cast members. Some people from that group support me, which means it's onto me. But again, it took a village. And exactly. to say nothing of the news stories themselves, which I did not want to talk about.
Yeah, and a lot of people from the audience wanted you to comment on it, so that's why we decided to do this. And I decidedly took a bit of a step back and just let you talk, because I don't have much to say beyond what you've said. You and I agree for the most part, and I've really got nothing else to say on it that you haven't already said.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. And I mean, okay. There's just certain things that I consider fodder for the channel or not. And I thought that I should let you guys know in my mind where that was.
And this would be a bit of a waste going up on the main channel as a rant. It wouldn't.
It's just
fit
not.
as
It's
such.
not the kind of stuff I want to put out into the world. But this,
Exactly.
the podcast is filled with me questioning myself and my own feelings about things and my ethics and my whatever. So again, hopefully there was some clarity in that, and I'm trying to de-stress because I yeah.
You already look a lot lighter and a lot more relaxed.
All right. So
So as we finish out the show, what are you up to this week, sir?
this week I am finishing the script for Fool for Love and hopefully recording, but we know how my ambitions go when it comes to stuff like that. Also, you and I are watching La Samurai,
Yes.
which I know nothing about, but
Same.
is in the IMDb. That was either an Ebert film or the IMDb. I think we've watched one Ebert film, and it was the most hated movie of any we'd watched.
That was The Pledge, yeah.
That was The Pledge.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So hopefully, if this is an Ebert film, we have better luck with this.
I don't I know that guy is a bit of a legend in your neck of the woods, but I don't trust him
Yeah,
off
he's
the bat.
he's an idol / inspiration of mine for sure.
Yeah.
But I too hated The Pledge,
Yeah.
and we'll probably be talking about that next week. Jack, what are you up to this week?
Well, I'm still puttering away on the Patreon bonus videos. A few of them have been uploaded. They're not live yet. We still got to make some thumbnails and put some finishing touches on those. But hopefully we will have a portion of that done before or as this goes live, this podcast. And on a personal note, I've got some health-related appointments coming up. Those are always a lot of fun. In the same way that being pecked to death by a group of angry roosters is a lot of fun. So not at all, but such is life. I have to do it. And other than that, whenever I get some free time, I'm going to get more acquainted with my new Nintendo Switch, which I'm very much looking forward to getting stuck into this afternoon.
At least you have the Switch to play for the pecking.
Right.
Before we get into the fanfic reading, I just wanted to let you know that I am at Ian Nittram on Twitter and youtube.com/passionofthenerd.
And you can follow me on Twitter at lackofsurprise1. That's all one word with a number 1 at the end. Or you can find me on the Discord server. I'm Jack Spraddington over there. And of course, you can join our Passionate Nerds Facebook group.
If you'd like to support the channel and keep us flush with uncomfortable sex scenes and digital costumes, it's patreon.com/passionofthenerd. With the $5 and up club there, you can join us in the Hangout. Oh, that's the other thing we're doing is this Saturday at 5:30 p.m. Mountain Time. We're doing the Patreon Hangout discussion for Blind Date, the Angel episode. And Restless is coming. After that, we've got Tashanshu and then Restless.
I'm excited for that one.
Yeah.
Or you can also support us by grabbing yourself something from www.passionofthenerd.com/store. We have a bunch of swagger over there for you to indulge in if that's your thing. We got shirts, hoodies, mugs, phone cases, and we've also got a couple of commentary tracks that you can grab for $1.99 US. We don't have too many so far. We've got one for the Buffy movie and When Harry Met Sally. Ian and I have been talking for a very long time about doing one for Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. We'll hopefully get to that at some point. That would be really, really fun, I think.
If you have any commentary requests, you can leave them as a comment in the
let us
comments
know
down below.
sure.
And if you're an Amazon Prime member, you may not realize it, but you can support me for free by using your monthly Amazon Prime Twitch subscription at twitch.tv/thepassionofthenerd. If you use Twitch, though, please use your subscription on someone you follow who actually streams, because they are the ones that deserve it. So we're going to go over to the fanfic reading now. Here is Gone by Terri Botta. Chapter 24. The previous chapters are in the show notes. Spike considered Buffy's birthday present to be a significant improvement over the battered box of chocolates he'd thought to give her the last time. No, this time he was going for something more appropriate. This time he was giving her a genuine Gruthlak battle axe, newly cleaned and sharpened and successfully selected from his own personal arsenal. Considering that he had lopped off the head of the Gruthlak himself with the axe, he doubted the demon would miss it. He hefted the axe and gave it an appraising once-over, smiling and hoping it would be well received. Nothing says I love you to a slayer more than a well-made and razor-sharp weapon, he amused himself with. He only hoped the red bow he'd tied around the handle wasn't too chintzy. He stopped outside the Summers house, hearing the party merriment from inside and smiling when he heard Buffy laugh. He wasn't going in right away, however. He had a wayward little sister to herd back into the house before she scampered off to the magic box. And there's my little escapee as we speak, he thought, as Dawn's figure appeared. Suppressing a chuckle, he placed himself in her path so that she'd bump right into him. Boo! She yiped and whirled around. Oi, Niblet, he said with a smirk. Geez, lurk much? She demanded, trying to salvage her wounded pride. He lit a cigarette to keep from laughing. Wasn't lurking. I was standing around. It's a whole different vibe. Dawn spotted the axe and gave him an incredulous look. Are you giving Buffy a birthday present? Oh my god, weird. Plus an axe? With a bow? Lame. And you know she'd never touch anything from you anyway. Spike snorted, amused by her crossed arms and haughty teenage snarkiness, but he played along, pretending to be irritated. Shouldn't you be tucked away in your Betty Bye, all warm and safe, where nothing can eat you? He growled, looming close and spinning the axe. She scoffed at him. Is that supposed to scare me? He sniffed and shrugged. A little tremble wouldn't hurt. Sorry, it's just... Come in. I'm badder than you, she replied. He stepped back and scowled. Are not! Am too. You're standing in the bushes holding an axe with a bow on it. She announced. What, sneaking off to braid hair and watch the Teletubbies with your mates, he retorted. No, I'm breaking into the magic shop to steal things, she replied, a serious look on her face. Magic shop, eh? All number of beasties between here and there, but they'd really go for a little Red Riding Hood like you. He looked out at the night, then back at the house. I bet that wouldn't sit too well with Big Sister. She gave him a look of false bravado. I can take care of myself. He pursed his lips and shook his head. I don't think so, sweet bit. I let you go, you get hurt, and Big Sis hands me my dust in my own personalized urn. Dawn crossed her arms and set her jaw stubbornly. You can't stop me. You've got a chip. He shook his head and tutted. Ah, bit. If I don't intend to hurt you, I can't stop you. What are you going to do, drag me back by my hair? She snarked. Nah. I save the haired dragon for special occasions. I just sling you over one shoulder and carry you back in like a sack of potatoes, he responded with a smirk. Oh, I don't think so, she said. Besides, you'd have to catch me first. Dawn dashed off, running down the street. Spike took a moment to count to 10 and ask for forbearance, then took off after her, leaving the axe behind. She'd barely made it to the end of the neighbor's yard before he overtook her. She slammed right into him as he grabbed her and picked her up. Vampire speed, bit. She struggled and kicked out with her feet, trying to twist out of his grasp. Put me down. Not until you're back in your living room, bit, he said, walking back to the house. Ow, you're hurting me. Not sure if she was telling the truth, he set her down. Since he wasn't intending to hurt her, the chip wasn't going off, but sometimes he didn't know his own strength and he could be holding her too hard. Spinning her around, he kept a grip on her upper arms and made her look at him. She was sullen and angry, refusing to meet his gaze. Let go of me, she demanded, trying to shrug off his hold. Not until you're safe in the house. I'm not safe in there, she yelled, tears brimming in her eyes. They talk about me in whispers and get quiet when they think I can hear. Everyone's acting all weird around me. She gave him a furious glare. Even you. You know, don't you? You know what's going on. Caught, he squirmed uncomfortably, now bit. I know for a fact that they're only trying to protect you. How was he to know that it was the worst thing he could say? Dawn flew into a rage, her anger giving her strength. "I'm not a baby. I can take care of myself." She ducked and he twisted, then she brought up her foot and kicked him in the groin. He gasped and doubled over, then fell to the ground as something smashed into the back of his head with brutal force. He had enough time to realize that she'd hit him with Buffy's birthday present before he blacked out. "Spike," a voice came, slightly irritated and followed by a jostling of his prone body. He groaned. "Spike," the voice said again, this time punctuated by a light kick. He groaned again and opened his eyes to see Buffy and Willow looking down at him. "Hi. Nice to see you could join us. Now, tell me what you're doing outside my back door," Buffy asked. Memory came flooding back to him, along with a splitting headache, and he sat up too quickly. "Dawn," he managed to get out before the wave of dizziness hit him. "What about her?" "She was sneaking off. I tried to stop her," he said, feeling the lump on the back of his head. "Bloody hell, that hurts." Buffy gave Willow a look, and the witch hurried into the house. "You're telling me my little sister knocked you out? Well, it's not like I can do anything to her. Still have the chip, you know. Bloody bint kicked me in the balls." Buffy laughed until Willow came running back. "Buffy, she's gone." The others joined them. "Buffy, what's wrong?" Joyce asked, worried. "Dawn's gone." "Gone? Where?" Giles remarked. "Magic box," Spike replied, rising slowly to his feet. "Magic box? Why on earth would she go there?" Spike cracked his neck and worked his jaw. "Said she was going to steal things." "Steal things?" Anya cried. "The money! She's after the money! We have to stop her! Xander, quick, get the car!" Spike put up a hand. "Don't think she's after the money, mates. She said something about you lot talking about her. I think she's going there to see if she can figure out what's going on." Buffy turned to Giles. "What if she finds out she's the key?" "Wait a minute. Dawn is Glory's key?" he blurted, using the opportunity to find out about the key. Buffy gave him a frightened look. "How did you know about the key?" "Dawn told me that Glory Bint was looking for her key. Are you telling me that Dawn is what she's looking for?" He locked eyes with Giles, looking for backup. The Watcher looked away and cleaned his glasses. "I'm afraid that's the case," Giles confirmed, giving Spike a knowing glance. "Bloody hell. We have to find her. Mom, you stay here. I'm going to the magic box. Hopefully she'll still be there," Buffy ordered. "We'll go with you. We have to check on the money," Anya said. It was tacitly agreed that Willow and Tara would stay with Joyce and Xander. while Xander and Anya and Buffy went to the magic box in Xander's car. Spike bullied his way into going along with Giles, and the older man agreed without too much protest. He was grateful for the Watcher's show of confidence. He hadn't seen Giles since the incident at the Bronze, and was glad the man appeared to have decided to keep his secrets and help him. Getting into Xander's car, they arrived at the magic box to find the door smashed open. The axe that had severed it was still stuck in the door, a crumpled red bow hanging forlornly from the handle. "What is this? Where did this come from?" Buffy demanded, yanking the axe from the door and looking at it. She took it from me," Spike admitted. She gave him an incredulous look. "You were bringing an axe to my house?" He looked guilty. "Actually, I..." Buffy looked at the bow, the axe, then at Spike, putting two and two together. "You were giving me an axe for my birthday?" He looked offended. "What? You don't like it?" Buffy gave the axe a look. It's a Gruthluck axe," Giles said, coming forward to examine the weapon. "Spike, where did you get this?" He smirked and puffed up with pride. "From the Gruthluck. Where else?" "You killed a Gruthluck demon." His smile widened. "With his own axe." He shrugged. "Blighter was Butterfingers and dropped it. Suppose he could have had something to do with my cutting it off his hand, but, Guys, enough with the weapons 101. Dawn, remember?" Xander interrupted. "And the money," Anya added, lest they forget. Birthday present forgotten, they headed into the store to find that Dawn was not there. Spreading out, they searched to find any clues to her whereabouts. Spike made a circuitous route around the sales floor until he came to the place where he and Dawn had read the Watcher's diary before. "Oi, over here," he said, calling them over to the place where Dawn had lit candles in order to allow her to read Giles's writing. Giles swore softly upon seeing the diary. Damn, she knows. Buffy looked stricken. "Giles?" "Okay, where would Dawn go if she was upset?" Xander asked. Buffy shook her head. "I don't know." We should organize a search, Giles said. The phone rang and Buffy leaped to get it. Hello, she said into the receiver. Hi, Wills? Dawn? She's there. They gave a collective sigh of relief. Oh, thank God. What? How is she? Okay, we'll be there soon. Yeah, the magic box is okay, except for the one door. She smashed it in with an axe she took from Spike. Don't ask. Okay, keep her there. Bye. She returned to face the rest of the group, her eyes concerned and relieved. That was Willow. Dawn came home. She's safe, but she cut herself with a kitchen knife. She's okay. Willow, Tara, and Mom are with her. Oh dear, is she okay? Anya asked. She's fine. Willow says it wasn't that bad, but Dawn's pretty traumatized. I need to get back there as soon as I can. Xander, can you give me a ride? Sure, Buff. Let's go. Xander agreed, fishing his car keys out of his pocket. I'll stay here and shore up the door she smashed with the axe, Giles said. They all looked at the axe lying forgotten on the reading table. The bow was still clinging valiantly to the handle, although squashed and unraveling. Spike gave it a dejected glance and pursed his lips, but said nothing. Buffy looked from the weapon to the vampire, back to the weapon, and then to Giles. The Watcher cleared his throat and gave Buffy a small nod. It is a fine weapon, and you're not likely to find one like it very soon. Good-luck demons are excellent metalsmiths, and they prize their weapons. This battle-axe appears very well made, and it is given in good faith, Giles told her haltingly, casting Spike nervous glances. Buffy pursed her lips and reached for the axe. She picked it up, feeling its weight and examining the blade. She even made an attempt to fix the poor battered door. Spike watched her do this with an expression of mild surprise and pleasure. Giving the axe a test swing, she twirled it in her fingers and turned to him. Thanks, Spike. You're welcome, Slayer, he answered with a nod. Happy birthday. She gave him a small smile. Xander and Anya gave him confused and wary looks, but neither said anything as Buffy hurried out the door. Xander and Anya followed her out, leaving Spike alone with Giles. The two eyed each other with grudging respect. Thanks for backing me up, Watcher. Yes, well, I have done a lot of thinking the past few days since our encounter at the bar, and I've come to the conclusion that I must trust in fate, and put my faith in believing that there is a higher purpose to all this, and that everything will turn out for the best, Giles responded nervously. Spike snorted. Yeah. Well, you'll have enough faith for the both of us then, Watcher, because I still think this is a bloody joke, and the sudden powers that be have a rotten, twisted sense of humor. Turning away, he moved to the broken door. Giles followed, and they secured the battered door as best they could, in silence. All right. That's it for this week. Jack, I love you.
I love you too, brother. I love you very, very much. And yeah, once again, thanks for inviting me to be a part of this.
Man.
I'm having a lot of fun.
I hope you're having fun.
Yeah.
And we both appreciate you all for listening to us. Have a great week. And please, and as always, be kind to yourself.
Yes. Be kind. Be gentle, and please take care of yourselves and take care of those around you.
And we'll see you in a week.
Take care, friends.